fun to see that on the big screen. Wow. That's a blast from the past.
I mean, that's right. It's the 40th anniversary this year. I don't think people realize that this was your first role in any movie ever.
My first time in front of a camera. It was wild. Yeah, no, I grew up in the Northwest. I was working in Seattle. I was working in Ashland at the Shakespeare Festival in '82, and I went to Seattle at the Empty Space. I was doing a play there. Going to New York to seek my fortune. That's what the plan was after graduating from training program. And I met and auditioned for DUNE. I think it was the Four Seasons Olympic Hotel. And I met Elizabeth Lustig in a room and with a camera, and she put me on tape and an audition. So I had never done anything like this before. And I said, what happens now? And she's like, well, I take the tape, I show it to David. Unless there's an actor in San Francisco, that I like more. So I said, well, just don't go to San Francisco. Obviously. Anyway, the rest went on from there.
That is just such and I think according to Wikipedia, you beat out some people who went on to major careers, like Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer.
Yeah, I found out later, I had no idea. Really, I was so naive. I didn't know anything about LA or Hollywood or, I liked movies, but I was going to, work repertory theater. That was my thing. So, and I found out later, that Tom had come in and Val was there and all these great actors, and they just liked me more for this particular role. So I was like, well, thank you. It gave me a good start.
So tell me about meeting with David and then that for initial, did you immediately hit it off?
We did. I think most actors feel that way about David when they meet him because he's so personable. And he's just friendly and nice, and he doesn't really make you audition. You don't walk in, you're just super nervous. I mean, you are super nervous, but then he just puts you right at ease. And we just had a conversation about all sorts of stuff. We talked about growing up in the Pacific Northwest and when we were kids, and we talked about red wine. I've mentioned that in some interviews as well. And after 20 minutes or so chit-chatting, he gave me the script and said, we're making this movie and I'd like you to learn these 5 scenes and then come back and screen test. And I was like, screen test? I didn't even know what a screen test is. He's like, okay. I was like, sure, of course I'm gonna do that. So I took the script home and read it on the plane back to Seattle and did the performance that night. We were doing Tartuffe at the Empty Space Theater, so I came back from that experience to that. It's like, this is crazy. Learned the scenes, because it's a script, really. And came back down and did my first screen test. That's crazy.
So, did you feel a tremendous pressure? I mean, especially once you fast forward to starting production. This is a massive film. There's 80 sets. There's thousands, literally 2,000 people, I think, working on the entire thing.
Yeah.
Did you feel that, or was it sort of almost like you're so young, you're like, I can do this?
Yeah, it was very much like that, and that's very perceptive. I was fresh out of school. I felt indestructible. I was 22 or 23 at the time. And I said, well, if this doesn't work, I'll find something else. Who thinks that, But I didn't really understand the enormity of it, of the excitement. But I got there, eventually. When you come to Mexico City, I had the screen test once in LA and then once again they flew me to Mexico City. And it began to sink in. But I remember, I was down in Mexico. I was sitting with some friends from the art department, some kids about my age. And we were at the Hotel Royale, having a drink, having a beer or something. And someone came and said, Mr. MacLachlan, you have a phone call. I was like, okay. And I knew that it was sort of coming, and so I went to the payphone, the bank of payphones on the wall, and picked up the phone, and they said, Kyle, you've got the role of Paul. I said, great. I said, I'm glad it worked out. And I walked back to my table and I said, drinks are on me. But it was very, very low key. It wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't like lost my shit or anything. I just said, okay. I said, well, I gotta get to work, That's the weird thing, you've been trained to act. You say, well, I got a job now, I gotta get to work. Not thinking that job was like potentially what the potential was. I guess I didn't understand what that was.
Were you a fan of the book? Like, did you?
Oh my God, I love the book. My friend Jim Lumblatt, who's Dr. Jim Lumblatt now, he gave me the book. We were friends in Yakima, growing up in Yakima. He gave me the book. He said, I think you'd like this book. DUNE, paperback. I still have it. In fact, I think he sent me the book that he'd given me to read, which I gave him back to him when I finished. And he sent it back to me. He said, here, I think you should have this, which is crazy cool. But I read it. I read the first 60 pages about 3 times. I had to go back. Wait a minute. What's going on here? But then I kind of got it in the glossary. I would go to the glossary every time. And then I said, okay, I got it. And I knew the book backwards and forwards. Yeah, I read it so many times. It's like, when you're that age, I imagined I was Paul, right? I mean, and you pretend and, you think, so what would Paul do here like that, and that kind of thing. And he really helped me through, teenage years. Oof. He was really a guide for me, kind of, the philosophy of everything,
And once you got the screenplay, how did that kind of compare for you reading the book?
I didn't understand it at all. I was like, wait a minute. You don't have this scene, and you don't have that scene, And I was like, what's going on here?
I think David did want to do it in 2 parts originally.
Yes, he did, yeah. I think, they're doing the new
Just
one.
the formula that...
Yeah, I always thought, later on, I thought, why don't we just make this into like a 10-part series or something? Just really get into all the nuance and the depth of it. That would be really cool. But anyway, no way to put that into one film, really. Not do it justice.
So, was there any concern for you going in, because a lot of people said, how would you realize this book on screen anyway? Were you in the camp of this is going to be hard to pull off?
I didn't even know what was going to go into it,
Yeah.
but I was like, it's going to be, I was so not uptight, but I was really particular because I love the book. I really knew the book, so I was like, well, wait a minute, we don't have face masks. What's with that? And we don't have hoods, and we don't have cape, and we don't have this, and the maker hooks should be like this, and they should be like this, and I had a whole, but I didn't say anything. I just said, well, they know what they're doing. So I was like, okay. I was like, but, and often, obviously there were decisions made that had to do with, well, we got to see the face of the actor. I said, okay. I said, I know, but you really can't be in the desert breathing. You're going to die, but okay. So there were, that was my first exposure or realization about, film, you can take liberties sometimes. Because I was so no, it has to be the exact thing, and I still sort of have that tendency, to be honest. I get really caught up in the minutia of it. Yeah, it has to be this.
Was there a lot of physical prep going into it? You had a lot of fight scenes. You were on set for months.
Yeah, they made me do so many fight scenes. I was like, fine. This is the stage training. I know all of this. So they put me with the wonderful fight trainer Kiyoshi Yamazaki. How fun is it to say that name? Kiyoshi Yamazaki. And he was fun, and so we developed this whole sort of fight thing using the short knife of the Chris knife, or Chris knife, depending on the pronunciation. And so we would train to do this stuff. And I really enjoyed that part of it. When I was at Ashland, we did Romeo and Juliet. That was all rapier dagger. Full-on rapier dagger with capes and the whole thing. I loved it. I loved all that stuff. So it was fun. That was fun.
How was the choreography with Sting and that?
He didn't want to die.
He didn't want to die.
He did not want to die. Sting does not die. I said, yes, he does.
And his character exists just to die.
Poor Fade. Lovely Fade. Ken McMillan, what a dream. Sting was great. We were down filming such a really nice, very personable guy. And he was about to go on the Synchronicity tour. Rarely am I'm not a jealous type of person, but I was like, wow, that's a life I want that. Go on tour, play in giant stadiums, you know. He probably goes like, I don't want to go on tour. I'm so tired of this. But he taught me a couple songs, Roxanne and Message in a Bottle on the guitar. That was pretty fun. That's pretty fun. Sting teaches you.
Oh, you can do a song, okay.
You know, just another day.
Did any of the older, veteran actors kind of give you advice, help you through it? I mean, Patrick Stewart, wasn't a huge screen star yet, but he was a legend of the stage.
Legend of the stage. I actually helped Patrick because he was a last-minute replacement for Aldo Ray, who had been hired. And Aldo was not able to do the role, so they said, we need to get someone. So they got Patrick, who they had seen. I don't know if I have the story just correct, so I won't tell it because it's probably wrong. But anyway, Patrick came to Mexico City, and I think our first scene was in the Ornithopter. At least this is the story I tell, so it's probably true. Anyway, so he kind of leans over to me and says, what's going on? What are these worms I'm talking about? Here's what's happening. He said, there are these giant sandworms, and they're going to eat these giant vehicles, like huge trucks. And they're enormous, they're very scary. And because he looks out the window, and I think he says something like, "Gods, what a monster!" Something like that, right?
Spot on.
All right. I dearly love Patrick. What do they say? Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I'm a huge fan of his. I love him dearly. We had a lot of fun together. And Everett McGill as well. So we were kind of a trio. Biggie. Everett would bring, he had a contraption that he would bring to set when we were working outside. We worked in a lot of dusty, not very fun locations. And he had fashioned like a giant, like a Diet Pepsi kind of big plastic bottle or something like that. It was a little smaller than that. And he filled it with moist paper towels, I think. And he would breathe through that because he wanted to keep his voice low. And that was his way of doing that. Okay, whatever works for you, it's all good,
But there's a couple, Everett McGill's so great in Twin Peaks. There's a couple people from Twin Peaks in this. Did you start to sense that a little bit of a community forming in that sense, or at least to see them all, like Jack Nance and some of them?
Oh yeah, well they were David regulars, Jack certainly, Brad Dourif comes back. Yeah, David really, he likes to work with people that he knows and he loves and who inspire him. And I'm lucky to be on that train as well. He and I have had a long and very wonderful relationship. I can't believe it's been 40 years. Wow. I got the white hair to prove it. Actually, I had white hair back then, but I was coloring my hair. It wasn't completely white, but thanks to my mother. Thank you. She had gray hair when she was in college, so yeah. Looked good on her. Yeah, nice.
Wouldn't know it.
Yeah,
Wow.
There you go. Family secrets.
Tell me a little bit just about David on that set. I mean, it's famous. It was famously unpleasant for him, but was there a sense of joy?
I never. It's funny because I know he struggled and I know it was difficult, but he was always pretty upbeat. I think the most fun he has is working with the actors, and the camera and the environment. Because I know that because when we did Blue Velvet, which was a completely different experience, obviously, much more intimate, different story, written by him. And also Twin Peaks, he just loves that creative environment, the camera environment. That's, I think, his favorite thing. So whenever I saw David, we were working in that way, and he was very, very happy and creative, and we were, it was joyful. But I know he struggled with the enormity of it, and just, imagine trying to control that or helm that picture. Oh my God.
And a lot of it happened in the editing room where things started to go south, right? They wanted to trim it down to the exact runtime is what the producers wanted. Were you aware of that going on?
No, again, and it's true as an actor, you kind of come in. There are other actors that they're involved all the way through. They're producing or they're executive producing it. And this one I just came in, I did my thing. I was called back many times. There were some reshoots and some voiceover work and all this kind of stuff. But the editing process was, in fact, we didn't even see dailies, what they would call them at that time, which was footage, not the previous day's footage, but usually a few days before that, would be screened. And it was the thing as an actor that you would be invited to come see the footage that had been filmed, you know what I mean? And David didn't want any of us to see any of the footage, and that was true in Blue Velvet too, so he was very, very private about that process.
You know, looking back on the film now, do you have any memories where you're like, oh, that conversation with David was like the kernel of, you know, an idea for Blue Velvet, or it became Dale Cooper, or like were there
Interesting, yeah.
that sort of
He gave me the script of Blue Velvet while we were filming. So he said, take a look at this, and I read it, and I really liked it. I said, wow, I kind of I related to it in that I understood why a character got kind of caught up in this thing, and then the next thing, and then he got into trouble, and his attraction to the light and the dark, and I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense to me. And that happened early on, actually, in the filming of DUNE. But the only thing that I really took, the one thing that pops into my mind that I took away, because I used to ask David a lot of questions, like when we were filming DUNE, I'd go in and I'd say, David, okay, Paul, you know, he's using these hooks, but this hook is really big. And the hooks as they describe in the book are you know, much smaller, easy to carry, portable. They kind of telescope out, little tiny hook. The idea is that you pull back the ring of the worm, and then the whole thing. And you know, I'm getting into the weeds, right? And David's eyes, he's starting initially, he's like being very polite, and then he's just like, I can't ask it. No more questions. No more questions. So I learned pretty early. I was just kind of like, okay, I'll just figure it out myself. I'm just gonna. Yeah, so yeah.
So fast forward to the film finally coming out and, you know, having the unfortunate round of reviews, and then it didn't perform. Did you think it was over? I mean, you said like, hey, I'm gonna try out this acting thing. Were you like, hey, I can go do it?
I was very much like, well, you know, okay, well, it didn't work. I mean, I was pretty casual about the whole thing. I was like, okay, well, you know, and so it wasn't the same kind of, like today, you know, I mean, everything is examined and, you know, looked over, which I understand, you know, because it's money. Back then, there weren't that many ways to determine how something, if it was successful or not. It was pretty much if it doesn't perform at the box office, man, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? Or maybe Variety, whatever, someone writes an article anyway. But I really wasn't paying that much attention to it. So I remember thinking, well, we were supposed to start Blue Velvet. So DUNE was released in December. We were supposed to start filming Blue Velvet like January. You know, supposed to start work on that. And word came that said, well, Blue Velvet's on hold for a moment. I was like, oh, that was supposed to be my next job. Because you see, contractually, I was not allowed to do film or television until the film was released. So I couldn't, you know, I wasn't working at the time. And, you know, sometimes actors, you know, you bank 2 or 3 things and you hedge a little bit, right? Something doesn't work, well, yeah, I got this one, maybe that one works. I didn't have the luxury of that. So I was like, well, okay. But I didn't, again, I was like, oh, I just find another job, right? It was like, okay, how hard can it be? This one was easy. So anyway, I come back. So I finally said, well, I gotta get to LA. Because I was living in Seattle at the time, because there wasn't any reason to be in Hollywood. I couldn't audition. So I got my Jeep, and I drove to LA, and I found an apartment. And I had an agent from DUNE. Like I had all the stuff, you know, all the trappings, but I didn't have, you know, work yet, and no one was calling. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna have to go out and find a job. So I just started auditioning. I was terrible auditions. Oh my God, it was just awful. So many bad ones. And then David came and said, you know, Blue Velvet's on track now. We're gonna shoot in Wilmington this summer. So I was like, okay. I was like, initially, when there was a whole story about me initially. Oh, I'd shown the script to my mom, who had ovarian cancer, and I mean, can you imagine showing that script to your mother? It's not what a mom wants to read. Unless she's a certain kind of mom, and then it's okay. Not my mom. Not my mom. But she was so sweet because she didn't want to tell me. She said, you know, but her husband said, because I asked him, I said, how was it? He said, well, I said, don't worry, I don't want to give her any reason to worry, right? Because she's in the middle of chemotherapy. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. We're not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I told David, and he said, I understand. And a few months went by, and finally, I just said, Mom, I have to do this. And this is a great film, and blah blah blah. Anyway, and David will take care of it. He'll handle it, so it's okay. And so she said, okay. And so then I went back on, and we made the movie. So,
wow, it's a miracle in and of itself.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Yeah, thank you.
I heard that you were going to possibly do more Dunes, at least like in the early
Oh, I had
stages.
five Dunes. But I was obligated contractually, with my salary already declared, 5 Dunes and 3 non-Dune option pictures. This is the contract that Dino had me sign.
Like, thank God.
This thick. I know.
Thank God you didn't know. I mean, we might not get Twin Peaks, right?
I'd still be doing Dunes today.
You'd be the Dune
Just
guy.
the Dune guy, that's it. And I'd be living in a huge mansion somewhere with lots of property somewhere, Santa Barbara or wherever. But man, what kind of life is that?
No, it's really fascinating to just kind of enter your career in this role, and then you can even see the character, like you kind of growing into an actor into this role, and like the character's growing. You can almost draw that parallel that you are too, and then you go out in the world and just do the greatest films and like TV shows ever. I mean, it's just like so.
Well,
it's
thank you.
It's such a trajectory.
Thank you. I've been very lucky. I've had a good trajectory. I've ups and downs and all arounds and everything, but overall, I look back and I say, okay, there's a few in there that I could probably do without, but I mean, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. But overall, yeah, I still pinch myself and saying, God, I'm still doing this. I still love it. I love the creative process. I learn every script, every film. I love the process of acting. I love discovering, I love taking apart the puzzle, and putting it back together again. I love finding the person, who are they? What are they about? What's inside? Why did they do this? Why do they do that? Why do they say this? I love all that. I don't know why I do, but I really do. And it's weird. I don't know.
No, I get it. I mean, that makes sense. I want to ask the audience, who saw Dune today for the first time? That's a lot of people. Are you finding, 40 years later, people rediscovering this movie? I imagine a lot of young people are kind of seeing it for the first time because, let's face it, you are a social media icon.
Thank you. It's not completely my fault, I should say. I have helped with that, but I do enjoy it.
But what are their reactions, the younger generation?
It's, I always just say it was directed by David Lynch. And anything that David creates is worth watching and looking. It may be flawed, Dune certainly flawed, but there's stuff in there that's really magical and it will transport you. You're in a different place in time. Of course, you're in a different place in time in sci-fi, but because of David's vision, a lot of what you see is not in the book, obviously, but it's so impactful, memorable, provocative, I think. And if you like film, and particularly if you're a fan of David's and that kind of his creative process, you're gonna need to see Dune. It's part of the thing. So, and it's really heartening to see that. I remember when I went to see Timothy's Dune, and I was like, okay, I'm a little nervous. And I went, and I said, is our Dune gonna even be, pertinent? Is it gonna have any life, afterwards? And I saw it, I enjoyed it. And I said, no, these two can live because they're so different. They can live in the same space, you know what I mean? And I said, that's fine. And it was good because they're different and they do different things, So that was good. And I had the surprising thing was I had such a trip down, memory lane. It was so nostalgic watching the new Dune. It's like, oh my God, remember that scene? Yeah. I know that line. Always gonna put his hand in the box. Don't put your hand in the box, please.
Here's Mind Killer.
I mean, right? And I'm like, because the dialogue, it's from the book, so I was quoting along with it. But it was really fun. And then it was fun to see scenes that we hadn't shot. That whole Duncan Idaho sequence, and I was like, whoa, yes, I remember from the book. We didn't shoot that, but that's cool. I like the way that it turned out. So I love the book so much. I love the story. It was just a great experience for me to watch it. So.
Did you give any advice to Timothy?
No. We did have one quick chat. We were at the Vanity Fair party. Yes. Vanity Fair party. We just ran into him really quickly, and we said, we both were saying, Paul is tricky. He is tricky because everything's up here. It's all voiceover in the book, you know what I mean? So how do you make that active, And I was like, yeah. We were both like, damn, this is hard. Anyway, it was fun to at least meet him for a moment and, shake his hand. It's great.
Well, you had the benefit of many movies beforehand too, so it's a different experience. I'd love to take some questions from the audience. Yeah, I see one right here. We can mic them up too.
Sure, oh, great.
So this is a two-parter. One, how does it feel to be the internet's dad currently? And then two, what's your favorite song on Brat? Because it's a damn fine album.
Oh, it's a damn fine album. I just, I'm so simple. Von Dutch is such a great. I go back to that all the time. It's so fun. It's so fun, and the internet is a fun, creative space, and and that's how I like to use it. I'm not. I just want to have fun, make people laugh, maybe point to a few causes that are important to me, but really just to have a good time, entertain a little bit. Maybe people think, but not serious approach. Have fun with it. But that's just me. That's how I like to do it. It's sort of like my personality, I guess. Keep it fun. And a little bit of life lessons, sprinkle in maybe. Once in a while.
Who else? Yeah, I see you waving your hand there.
What's with the dogs?
What's with the dog? Right? We're about to shoot the scene and somebody walks over and puts a pug in my arm. And I'm like, is this necessary? You know how hot it was that day? You know how hot pugs are? I swear to God, I was roasting. I love dogs and stuff. Pugs are, but I love dogs. No, he was a cute dog. But they're heavy too, they're solid. So I had the dog, and then Patrick had to take the pug. Which I loved. I don't know who decided on the pugs. I don't know, I really don't. To this day, I don't know.
It remains a mystery.
It's a mystery. It's a mystery.
Who else? Oh, yeah, right there.
Hi there. Hello.
Hello.
Big fan.
Thank you.
So my question is, did you have any interactions with Dino, and what was your impression of him?
Oh. So, I met Dino the same day I met David and Rafaela, Dino's daughter. And so I was going to meet, I didn't really understand this, but I'm going to meet the big boss, because I met David and Rafaela at Universal. They were in one of the bungalows at Universal. And then the PA said, on my way back to the airport, because I had to do a performance that night, remember? I had to get back on the first meeting. So I was like, okay, so we drove by the Beverly Hills Hotel, and Dino had a bungalow there, where he likes to stay. So we went to Dino's bungalow, and we knocked on the door. I remember it was like a screen door. It's kind of funny, it's like a real throwback. I don't know if they still do that thing with a screen door. Went in, Dino was there, he had been making lunch. He was making pasta, he was cooking or eating. He was just very simple by himself, just hanging out. And we sat down for a minute on the couch, and he said, "How old you are?" Kind of like Yoda in a weird way. In fact, I wonder if they modeled Yoda. We should do some research on that. And he asked me that question, and I think two other questions. There was three questions. I don't remember. I can't remember the other two. And he's like, okay. So then he spoke to David about me. He said, "Hey, seems fine." I was like, okay. But he called me Kale. This is the origin of the Kale story. And because he couldn't say Kyle in Italian, it's Kale. So David started calling me Kale. So now I'm Kale, and because his initials, David's initials are DKL, I call him DKL. And my son is Callum. David calls my son Calum. It just keeps going. Dino's accent is a gift that keeps on giving. That was my first meeting.
How about way in the back? Yes.
What was the most challenging scene to capture for crew and cast?
The most challenging scene in DUNE?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, we had a lot. We had a lot of challenging scenes. I remember it was the night, and I never remember if this, I think it's in the extended version, but it's a fight sequence with the actor's name is Judd Oman, and we had a fight sequence in what they called the dead dog dump. And what they had done is there was a particular kind of unusual outcropping, rock outcropping that they had cleared it was a dump. And there were all these dead, I wasn't there during that part of the thing, but they cleared this whole thing. And we shot the fight. This is after I meet the Fremen for the first time, and we get accepted into the tribe, right? Jama says, he surprised me, I invoke the right to, and so he basically challenges me to a duel. Anyway, that night, we did a fight sequence. So it was night, and they wanted it dusty, so they had these big fans, and they were sprinkling dust. It's actually Fuller's Earth, a thing called Fuller's Earth. God knows how carcinogenic it is, I don't know. On the fan, and it was blowing the dust into us as we were fighting. Well, when you're fighting, and so I would finish a take, and all my teeth were red, because it was this red dust, breathing in all this stuff. It was the worst night. It was awful, because you're sweating, and you're breathing in dust, and you're basically dying. And that was a hard night for me. You asked about the crew, I don't care. I do, but that's the first story that came to mind. So. That was a tough one.
And then they cut the scene.
And then they cut the scene. Yeah, I know, they cut the scene. Shoot. Well, that happens.
See a hand right there.
Okay, so follow-up to that is, what was your favorite scene to shoot?
My favorite scene to shoot? Well, the love scene was very nice. No, let's see, my favorite scene. I really did enjoy the box scene. That was fun. Because Sean Phillips is so delightful. I like that one. It was fun to work with Sean. It was really fun to work with Max von Sydow because, he's like 6'8", first of all. The guy's enormous. And he's like this. And he is such a gentleman. Such a gentleman. And just very gracious and kind. And gravitas out the pores, just the guy walks into me like, oh, he runs a planet. That guy, you know what I mean? It was like that. I have a lot of fond memories. And when I came in, I just saw like the credits rolling, seeing the faces of people that are no longer with us and remembering the time. And we were 7 months in Mexico City filming. That was my first thing, you have these attachments that are so strong and memories that are so strong of just people reinforced by seeing the faces. Those are a couple of scenes, I guess. I'm sure there's more. It was, it was fun to kill Sting. I keep bringing that up. I don't know.
You might be the only person that has ever done that.
Probably, yeah. It was the first and last time, because he said never again.
We got time just for a couple more. Yeah. Is that a? Yeah, that's a hand in the way back corner.
Does the House of Atreides have a name?
Does the House Atreides? Pug. Dog. I think maybe he did. What should the name be? Atreides pug. I don't remember. It all happened so fast.
Yeah, they just ended here.
Here, take the dog. Okay. He's on the space flight with you. Okay. Why isn't he down with the other dogs? I don't know. He must have been a favorite dog. We're really going to take him to this hot planet? Really? Ah, that's not very nice for a pug. Would have been worse if it were a husky, I suppose, or something.
You have to be able to hold it.
Exactly. That's a long trip.
All right, we got time for one more. Who's got a really good question? Yeah, let's go right here.
One more scene question. Are there any scenes that you remember really liking to shoot that didn't make it into the theatrical or extended version?
Was the scene where, this is the whole thing. It's like most of what we shot is in film. But there was a scene when Gurney plays the balisette. It might have been in the extended version, right?
Yeah.
And I remember we're all sitting around in this room just listening to play the balisette. And the balisette was a troubadour instrument, which is like a mandolin type thing, right? It was something small. You sling on the back of your shoulder, as described. Well, they decided that they were going to make this a big balisette. And it was actually an extension of an instrument called the stick, that I think Tony Levin maybe, Genesis and bass player. King Crimson, thank you. Bassist, amazing. He played it really well. So after it's a 10-string, crazy 10-string instrument that you just push, And I can't remember the inventor's name. Anyway, so we're sitting there, he's sort of playing this very melodic song, we're all kind of, beautiful. And we're like, well, how do we show our appreciation? Didn't we do something like did we click fingers or we did something? I remember going, what? This is ridiculous. But anyway, but we're all very, very serious. I'm sure if we caught anybody's eyes, we would have started laughing. But it was a nice little moment that didn't make it into the film. But I think it might be in the extended.
Do you know if we're ever going to get an extended that we could, because it's not unavailable?
No.
I think anyone can approach David about it.
Yeah, David's, I've actually, teasing, I say, you should do your cut, and he's like, it looks at me like.
You gotta be kidding.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, this was so much fun. You're the best.